Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Noona's Noonchi podcast, where I do deep dives and reactions to some of your favorite K-dramas with special guests. I am so excited to have with me someone I met on Clubhouse, Wayne Boatwright. Now, why I'm excited? Well, he had a very interesting story when he introduced himself on Clubhouse. He said that he got into K-dramas during his time in prison. That's enough to go, what? What did he just say? So Wayne, thanks for joining us on Noona's Noonchi's podcast. So excited to have you.
That's a great introduction. Perfect. Basically, I'll say that I have three concentric circles of Clubhouse. I've got, I do a lot of deep philosophy and politics. I do a lot of criminal justice reform, and we'll get into that later as to why. But I've got this secret little stash of Korean drama Clubhouse clubs that I'm a member of, and I love it. It's my own, it's my guilty pleasure. I know it, I can't help it, but that's what I love to be too. And that's how we met.
So. That's how we met. Yeah. And I do want to share this. It's not just your intro, which we'll get into, that I just introduced you as, but your passion. I could hear it in your voice on Clubhouse going, man, this guy loves K-dramas, and it's contagious, right?
Love.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You love it. And so that said, let's talk about how you first got into them. So again, repeat, you said you first got into K-dramas, Korean dramas, while in prison. Can you explain further?
Who would think that? First of all, I know who would think that. Now I got to tell you, prison is a very surreal environment in many, many ways. Hairstyles, for example. In prison, whatever hairstyle you had when you went to prison, you still wear, even if it's 40 years later. There are mullets, there are jerry curls, there are fros, everything you had, right? So prison's a really weird place, but it's also a place that's outside of time in other ways. And you lose track of time in prison. You start to notice the full moon, you start to notice when years pass. And so you ask yourself, how can I stay connected to the world? And how do you find that out? And for me, it was, to be honest, it was mainly about reading literature. But my saving grace, not just COVID, and it saved me through COVID too, was finding Korean dramas on these back channel TV channels they have in prison where I could watch my Korean dramas, and I got enthralled. And much to my surprise, before I got into that, I found out that my guys I was the managing editor at the San Quentin News. And so it's a lot of, prison's a lot of minorities. You know, I was like the only white guy there. And they would watch Korean dramas in the newsroom because they couldn't watch it in their cell because that wasn't cool. But in the newsroom, they could watch all the Korean dramas, and we would schedule times to go watch Korean dramas together and sit there and watch them and just be enthralled by them and be transported out of that prison to another world, another place, another time with the historical drama.
So that said, how long were you in prison?
I was there for 6 years, 3 months. So my crime was I took a life with, I was a drunk driver. And so I went to prison as an adult, not a child, unlike many of the guys in there. And in prison, I did a lot of work, which is why your idea of dealing with the mental health issues and everything else is so resonant with me, because I did a lot of work, first introspection on myself, and then how to be creatively self-expressed, because just being within yourself isn't enough. You have to be expressive and part of society, and then into service, right? How do we work with others? So that arc existed with my time in prison as part of how, as I like to say, I rebuilt my psychic delusion house from who I thought I was before prison to who I was as a committer of a crime, taking of a life, to who I could become. I had to rebuild that house I was going to live in. And Korean dramas helped with that.
And so along the lines of that, first of all, that was really poignant. I feel a little bit like emotion coming in me, and that's the therapist in me. But how do K-dramas help you then? Like, how was it part of that introspection that contributed to, I want to say, your own healing is what I'm hearing?
Yes. And it healed others too. And I promote K-dramas everywhere, even on Clubhouse. Even so, even though I got 3 concentric rings, I'll tell the people in the other ring, by the way, check out KDramas because that'll explain this issue. For example, I just did a podcast on the meritocracy definition and the achievement gap in America. And so I use Korean dramas as a reference point to try to entice people to get involved in them. Why? Korean dramas are aspirational. They're all about what you can be, what you could be. Even if it deals with regret, it's how do you get through that regret to be something else. American shows are much more simplistic. There's good and bad in American shows. Korean shows, especially Korean dramas, let you see that battle's really within the person, not exterior. It's not that person's bad and that person's good. No, every person has this struggle going on inside themselves. Right. And how do they deal with it? And I love the way they're able to bring that out. There's a newer show called Startup, for example. And in Startup, there's 2 sisters who've been separated since they were very young. And they're kind of setting up the rich sister who went with the mom when her parents got divorced, or her father died, her parents got divorced and whatever, went off. And she had the rich life, the privileged life, the existential life. And so she's set up as a bad person when you watch the first couple episodes. True. But that character changes. That's right. You get to meet her as a person and you get to respect her and appreciate her and understand her as a human being. And I got to tell you, prison it's not just that it changes you. It's like an electronic tattoo on your face. People don't know what to expect of you or who you are. And so I think Korean dramas, with their ability to show both regret and regeneration and recreation, are a wonderful tool, a wonderful example of how everybody's complex, and that you don't have to be defined by the worst event in your life or the worst event that you did, the worst act that you did. You could actually be more than that. And I think that comes out in so many Korean dramas. That's why I love it. I love when I say I'm addicted. Now I mainly watch Netflix because I don't have all these channels like other people do. I'm still kind of new to this.
There's a lot on Netflix though. That's all you need, really.
There's a lot on Netflix, yes. And you would be surprised at this. Not only are hairstyles go over the decades, but a lot of these guys in prison don't have any contact to the all thing of the internet, right, and how the internet works and what it means. And so as I've slowly been getting back into this process, getting an iPhone, learning all this stuff, watching YouTube shorts. That's how, I might have found you on Clubhouse, but I found you on YouTube as well. And I get to watch your YouTube videos, which I love, and your smiling face. This is the first time we've met in person because we've talked on Clubhouse a number of times, but I know you already. I get to see you already. And so those are gifts of technology, but I'm still learning my paces. I know there's a lot of other broadcast channels and other things, and I'm sure I'll get to those on K-dramas. But for right now, Netflix.
No, perfect. Netflix is good. I mean, it gets overwhelming. So we'll take one step at a time. Trust me, because I'm like, do I go to Vicky? Should I watch Netflix? But Netflix has some great ones. So that said, wow, aspirational. I just heard that you said that word, and that really touched me. Is there a specific K-drama? Well, first of all, what was your first K-drama that you watched? Because that's always memorable.
Oh, that's interesting. The first one I watched was called Magnolias in Bloom. Now, there's another show that has a similar name.
Yeah, the Chameleon.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And it's also called Lovers in Bloom.
Oh, okay, because I was like, Magnolias. There's different names. Yeah.
And it's one of the classic K-dramas, which means that they're 20-minute or 30-minute episodes, not these hour-long high professional ones that you see now. It is old school K-drama.
Yeah.
A lot of interior shots. They're not traveling to, Spain or something like that. It's
Italy, like Vicenzo. Right. Wow.
Exactly.
So yeah, because I don't know the year of that drama, but how did you first see that in prison? What are the channels that you're watching it on?
Well, see, now that's a great question. Another thing about prison is boredom is a high issue. Like, what do? So you explore channels. Now, I was in a dorm, and in a dorm you have 200 men and only 2 TVs. We did not watch Korean dramas on those TVs.
Gotcha.
Don't worry. That wasn't what those weren't able to watch the TV, but they allowed us to get a little flat screen for individual stuff. But it was broadcast, so no digital connection. So this was a broadcast channel. I think it was 36.3 in California, or 36.2.
Okay.
I think it was SBS, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, right.
But it's a broadcast channel that's a local, not pirate, but really local channel from the Bay Area that would show these Korean dramas. And they would always be on at the same time at night, like 7 p.m. or something. So you had to be, and they're on every day. Because with these Korean dramas, they weren't showing them once a week. They were on every day.
Every day.
So it was such a gift to be able to, and to know that there's 100 or 200 episodes.
Right.
Half an hour, so that you can get enveloped into this new world, this different world for time.
I think I like that better, half an hour episodes. Now they're about an hour and 15 minutes, a little longer, takes a lot of time, but they grip you. But that's interesting. I like that. So, wow, Lovers. Okay. So you watched it. It sounds like, were you right away hooked in, or were you like, okay, what is this? I want to know what the experience was like for you.
Well, I first heard about K-dramas, and this will sound surprising because again, I was 49 when I went to prison. I should have heard of K-dramas, but I didn't really think about them at all. Was the guys in my newsroom who I would work late because I was the managing editor of our San Quentin News. I'm going to give a plug for it. sanquentinnews.com. Go online. I'm the web manager now that I'm outside. So if it's any problems with the website, you can blame me. But sanquentinnews.com. It talks about restorative justice activities and principles, both in San Quentin as well as in California. We've got a subscription base of 30,000 copies of the newspaper we send throughout the California system because it's that value.
Wow.
And so I was the managing editor at the San Quentin News. I was working there. And I noticed that these guys would do everything at the San Quentin News because they didn't want to go back to their cell. If you have any idea, if you see that movie Alcatraz, that's the size of the cells in San Quentin.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Your arms can reach the walls. You don't want to go back to that cell. You want to stay out of there as much as possible. So these guys would stay in the newsroom all day long. But around 7 o'clock, when most of the guys had left, they'd turn on the TV to the K-drama channel. And they would sit in front of the TV enwrapped by K-drama. And I'm talking about these guys committed multiple murders. I'm not talking about just me. These guys would sit there enwrapped by K-dramas and talk about the shows. And so I heard about it that way. And then I said, okay, I've got to see what the hell they're talking about. And so I watched it on my own personal TV because what happened back there is they show it 2 times. They showed it in the morning because that's the real time it's on in Korea. And then they showed it in the evening, which is the same hour time that it's on in Korea, I think. But it's the
right, time. But yeah, because they show it in the evening in Korea, right?
So I couldn't help myself. I'd watch it in the morning, and these guys would wait until the evening to watch it because they couldn't watch it in their cell. They couldn't watch it at work in the morning because it's too crowded. They'd have to wait until the evening. So I knew what was going to happen. I loved it.
That's good. That's good.
I was evil. I was evil. I admit it.
Wow. But so they were enwrapped. So were you. What was so gripping about it? I mean, let's break down the K-dramas. You're talking about people committing multiple murders or different murders or crimes, and then yet they're sitting there in front of the K-dramas completely enveloped in the experience. Why?
100%. Think of the family values that are expressed in Korean dramas. Grandmothers almost always live with the family. If somebody gets sick, even if you've been feuding with them for 10 years, you show up at the hospital bed.
It's true.
Because they're sick. And most of the guys that I dealt with in prison committed their crimes when they were really young. Some as young as 16 years old. And yet they were sentenced as an adult and so had to go into an adult prison. And so their experience of family life is diametrically opposed to anything shown on Korean dramas. Most of them raised by a single mother, most of them in a broken home in multiple different ways, most of them with a myriad of half siblings, which causes a whole nother dynamic and challenge for their personal life. And so for them to have this model of a life, I assume that's what attracted them to it. But most of these guys are lifers. And when I say a lifer, that means they're in sentence, not just for life, but usually they'll have a determinate sentence, say 25 years. So they have to serve 25 years, but it's 25 years to life. So after they've served the 25 years, then they go to the parole board. And if the parole board finds them suitable, then they can be paroled and come outside. And if not, they have to stay in prison. I knew a guy that spent 39 years in prison, even though his sentence was 20 years to life. So a lifer could mean life, whether it's indeterminate or not.
Right.
So these guys are always trying to find something, I assume, something new, something different, to help them escape.
Yeah, just help them escape, to give them hope.
And to give them hope. And that's the thing about Korean dramas is the cheesy endings of Korean dramas. Oh my God, the reunion 10 years later, so you see how everybody did and who married who. And I mean, these cheesy endings, but they're consistent and they're wonderful and they're happy. And I assume that when you contrast that with American shows, any American show is so commercial built and focused on wealth and individual success and fame and justice. You know, all the criminal shows are about, they're going to catch the guy, you know, they're going to do these things, not about fairness, right? Not about, you know, I'm not going to turn you in, Dad, even though you did this awful thing because you're my father, but you've got to atone for it, which is what happens in Korean dramas. Or in the case of the one I watched, the guy who was a drunk driver and got out of it because he was really rich and he got his you know, this low life to take the hit for him, came clean and admitted his crime and faced it up by the end of the show.
Wait, which one is this one?
This is the same one, Lovers in Bloom.
Oh, Lovers in Bloom. Gotcha. Okay.
Because the bad guy, so this guy becomes a good guy and he fell in love with, you know, first of all Korean dramas by definition have at least one threesome going on. And if not three, some of my favorite ones, it's 4 to 1.
Right.
So there's
the main lead and the second leads.
Yeah, the Cinderella one, there's one girl and then there's 4 guys.
Right.
You know, it's just hilarious to me how they consistently do this in Korean dramas. They have like a multitude of different guys, all involved, all on the cusp of a relationship. But they also model a good relationship. They talk about virtue. They talk about honesty. They talk about cherishing somebody, not as just objectifying them. It's not just how beautiful somebody is. You fall in love with them because how good they are. And that's, again, contrasted with American shows. Come on, you know, that's not how it works in an American show. In Korean shows, you fall in love with them because they have their diligent work ethic, education.
True.
Wow,
you are like the best advocate for K-dramas. This is like so awesome. So how many? Okay, so because I know you're an addict too. So how many times a week do you watch K-dramas?
Oh my God, daily. I'm honest.
Well, me too. It's my self-care.
And I've got to tell you, it is self-care. Yes. It's not just self-care. During COVID, you don't see anybody.
That's true.
I've had a year plus with a lot of time alone. The only people who've come in my apartment basically are my kids, you know, who spend time with me. And so it gives me a chance to really see warmth and happiness and love. I've got to tell you that on a personal note, so you can tell I've got some personality and I'm friendly and outgoing, let's say. I've had to create a whole new social network since prison. And most of them are related to criminal justice reform because I'm very passionate about reforming the system that I think is broken. Not because of my case, because of the examples I gave. You're 16 years old, you have a 20-year sentence, but you spend 39 years in prison. That's crazy. 20 years is enough. You've learned your lesson after 20 years. We can let you out of society. So for me, it feels like, and this isn't fair totally, but it feels like with my old community, I'm a black sheep. I consider myself a black swan. But when I say my old community, you know, I'll have dinner with somebody once. And mind you, I was a successful, we haven't gotten into this, but first of all, I'm a Ivy League educated attorney. Okay. So I went to Cornell and I worked internationally. I worked globally. I've done a lot of stuff. It's not just TV that I watch in my mother's basement, right? Sure. I've had a real life and a real world. and the ability to connect to a different culture is something I've always admired and appreciated. For me, especially because of the loneliness that comes with this. For example, I've got a bunch of friends that we lived internationally together. We'll do a Zoom call, 6 of us, and just chat for like 2.5 hours, right? Just to catch up.
Yeah.
And those are guys I haven't seen in 20 years. But my friends here in San Francisco, I might have one phone call with them. They just don't know what to do with me because none of my friends had ever been to prison, had any idea what that meant. They're not sure what I am now that I'm out. And
so it's shifted your whole life since, and K-dramas, it sounds like, helped fill loneliness or the void that perhaps you felt as you came out of prison and started a new life.
Exactly. It really was it was so helpful. It is so helpful to watch these shows and to allow them to transport you and to be, again, this real sense of you can succeed. You can be positive that underlies every single show. And a lot of, I love all the tropes. The clenched fist when you get angry.
Right. You got it.
The swoon where the girl drops into your arms and you realize you really like her, even though you didn't know it before. And there's all these tropes that are so hilarious.
They are. That's what makes the K-drama so cheesy, but relatable and predictable. We like that. You know, people do need that, you know?
Exactly. That consistency is helpful. It's comforting. Now, I've got to tell you, it covers many different levels. My daughter is 15, and she was lucky enough, and this will sound crazy to you outside of California, but in San Francisco, she went to a public school for 9 years where she had a Korean immersion program, cultural, language, and everything. So she got to learn Korean. She has a home book. She got to do all this stuff. It's the only school like it in California. And so she got into that program as a kindergartner. And that was very important to her mother and I that she got a chance to do that. So I've been trying to entice my 15-year-old to watch Korean dramas with me.
Yeah.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay. Okay. Get her into K-pop first. Is she into K-pop?
Yes. Loves K-pop. Loves K-pop.
Tell her some of the K-pop stars are in K-dramas.
That's a great idea. I never thought of that. I'm not a K-pop guy. Oh my gosh.
True Beauty. Get her into True Beauty, even though I'm not thrilled about True Beauty. But Cha Eun-woo, Astro K-pop singer, he's so popular. She may know him. I mean, BTS's V is in Hwarang. That's on Viki. So that you don't have Viki. Okay, so and on Netflix, the ones I just mentioned. But no, if you just mentioned to her, well, Cinderella and the Four Knights, I think that's a great one.
I love that one. I love that show. I love that show.
I know you love that show.
It's so
love
cute.
seeing a grown
It's so
man.
wonderful. Oh yeah. No, and you don't get it. My family were French Huguenots. They came over in the 1650s. I'm as old school WASP Puritan as you can imagine. But when I got into Korean dramas, I said, oh.
I love watching you. I know I was about to say just an older white man that just got so giddy when I mentioned Cinderella and the Four Knights.
That is the best show ever. One of my favorite shows.
Is that right?
Music, it's got drama. It's got how does a family come together? How do you heal a broken family?
That's true.
How do you bridge a generation gap in a broken family? Because the middle generation's gone. You've got a grandfather and the grandkids. You know, there's so much there, and friendship. You know, and humor. The other great thing about Korean dramas is even if you watch one that looks serious, like there's this one called Vicenzo, which is about this Italian mobster. Vincenzo. Okay, but Vincenzo is about a guy who used to be the consigliere of a mafia gang and killed a lot of people when he was in Italy.
Yeah, and he still does. He still kills people in Vincenzo. But then there's like slapstick comedy when he, dons a costume to be a shaman. I mean, you're just cracking up. It's funny.
It's so funny. It's
okay.
So
Thank
funny.
you, because there's some folks on Clubhouse that we will argue. That's our next Clubhouse talk, perhaps on Vincenzo, because people are like, it's not that funny. I'm like, what? It is funny.
It is funny, and I love the fact they had the Italian tie. The female lead doesn't do much for me as the attorney, but Vincenzo gets to wear these amazing suits.
It's true.
That's another thing. So you wouldn't guess this. I mean, my ex-wife used to work at Bergdorf Goodman in New York. It's a one and only store. It's a very prestigious, I used to wear Charvet ties. I mean, I was very much into fashion, and I love the fashion that can show up on Korean dramas. Like there's this one show called It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And the female lead is an author. The outfits she wears, look, I'm not saying they're all great. Some of the outfits in Korean dramas are very tacky looking to me, but the outfits she wears,
yeah.
Fashion.
I mean, that's why I watched her. I mean, just some of her hats and the things. Right. You're right. The Korean fashion, the K-drama fashion is really top notch. I mean, yeah, you're right. Vincenzo's suits, I'm like, wow, looking good.
And I got to tell you, I couldn't talk about that to guys in prison. Here, I'll give you something. I'm going to teach you a new word.
Okay.
Well, it's called Bonnaroo. Have you ever heard the word Bonnaroo before?
Bonnaroo. No.
I knew a guy as Bonnaroo for 6 years. I called him Bonnaroo. That's all I called him. I knew his real name was Richard, but I called him Bonnaroo because that was his name. You get a nickname in prison, and from that culture, everybody's got a nickname, right? So his was Bonnaroo. He just got out literally less than 2 weeks ago. I got up at 5 a.m. and with some friends, we drove up to the prison gate to welcome him home after serving 23 years in prison.
Wow.
So we brought him out, and that's when I discovered what Bonnaroo meant. It means that you're always well attended, and like you iron your clothes, you're not wrinkled, you're well presented. I didn't know that's what it meant. Bonnaroo means, so I'm very curious to see how this guy tries to pull off Bonnaroo now that he's out. Because in prison, you don't got much choice.
Right. I was going to say, you don't have what Bonnaroo is actually, what language is it in? It's not in English.
It's just, oh yeah, it is. That's Ebonics, baby.
Wow. Okay, Ebonics, yeah. Things I'm learning.
There was so much Ebonics in prison, and I never played that game. I never pretended to be black. I am what I am. By the way, I never disclosed I was a lawyer, let alone an Ivy League lawyer when I was in prison. I told them I was just a startup businessman that did a lot of startup work, and used that as my my explanation for why I was there and who I was. Because they said, "Why is he here? We know why we're here. Why is he like that here?"
But it sounds like you made some friends, good friends in prison.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good. They say that some of your best friends you live in a foxhole with, if you take the military analogy, and there is a brotherhood that develops because you know who's got your back and who doesn't. You know who's honest and who's not. Because trust me, if you're not an honest person, it'll come out in prison, and everybody will know. By the way, the other thing prison is like, you're gonna die. It's like a high school female cheerleading squad. The gossip travels faster than the speed of light.
I can get that.
And the vindictive little, I'm going to tear you down because how could you be successful? Oh my gosh. These guys wouldn't like me to admit that about them. Again, they want to be only stone cold killers. They're like high school cheerleading squad, in my opinion.
Interesting. Then maybe that's another reason why they really related to the K-dramas, because the K-dramas has that kind of that feeling of not gossipness, but like that community culture where you could just, in Koreans, they like to talk. So I feel like that might be another way that they've related to that. Just saying,
I think that's a good example. And I also think it fills a gap they didn't know they had. They had to become adults very quickly. Trust me, if you're 16 when you go to prison, no matter how hard-assed you thought you were before you went to prison, you're going to learn some lessons. And so they had to become adults in certain ways. They never got a chance to live in a safe society, a society where the policemen don't carry guns, a society where anger is shown not by killing somebody or beating somebody up, by just clenching your fist. I think it filled a gap for them in a way that, it's never shown, right? It's always down by their side.
Yeah. You are so good. You're right. You are so
always down by their side.
Right.
So
or they say fighting.
It's so fighting. I love fighting. Fighting. Oh my God. I'm watching a new one that does that, where it's about some TV producer, this woman who's comes back to life, and she's got a 14-year-old kid. Love. Let me see if I can find the name of it. It's Love Something. Was It Love?
Was It Love? Yes. You know what?
Was
I
It
didn't see
Love?
that one.
Just came out. Love the show. Love the
I was
show.
gonna say you
I
love all
already
of
started
them.
watching. No, I can't say I love them all. I
Okay.
got to be honest. Um, I don't love them all, but I like a lot of them. Some of the hardcore crime ones, I just don't watch crime shows,
Me
so I
too.
don't need to hear about all that stuff.
Me too. I don't watch them either.
Really
I've
talk.
heard they're very well done, but I watch K-dramas for my own mental health, so I'll pick the ones I want to watch, right?
Well,
So no,
and
was it love? I heard that was good.
I've got to tell you the best thing by far about Korean dramas is nothing we've talked about yet. Right?
Okay.
What could it be? The best thing, absolutely by far, the reason every American should watch Korean dramas, the reason every parent should make their kid watch Korean dramas is every single show talks about the class system. And America, we've hidden the class system with racial language, but it's not a racial thing. It's a class thing.
Classism,
The
yeah.
urban poor are urban poor, whether they're white, Hispanic, or black. You know, and we don't acknowledge that in America. We've hidden our class system with racial language, and it's not racial. It's class.
It's class.
And every single Korean show, regardless, criminal, love, high school, every single Korean show shows you a path through the class divide.
That's true. That's
Shows
true. And
you
it's a
how
big part of it. It's a big part of the theme, right? You
every
see
single
it.
one.
Yeah.
Every single one. And
Very
that's an
good.
important lesson that we don't learn in America. We're taught to vilify. All rich people are evil. You know, it's like, what?
Right.
No. You know, my son's a little older than my daughter, and he was writing a piece about the stock market or something in high school. And he told me that all billionaires were bad. And I realized that in his mind, a billionaire is equivalent to a dragon guarding a hoard. He's destroyed a castle. He's sitting on this hoard of gold. And if you can just kill the dragon and distribute that gold, everybody will be happy. And I tried to get him to realize that, well, no, he's more like an orchard farmer. You know, he's got all these trees that he tends that produce a lot of fruit. They produce a lot of income. But if you cut down the trees, there's no more fruit. If you cut down the trees to sell the wood so people can eat today, there's no fruit next year. You know,
right.
And how much of the fruit can you take? That's fine. You have to tax his income, but maybe not his wealth. Or maybe you do tax his wealth through antitrust. But I just wanted to get him out of the visual, the emotional state that rich people are dragons guarding a hoard.
That's fascinating, yeah.
And in Korea, there's always a sense of duty among rich people. You know, they may have a lot of status, they may not always carry it, but they take that responsibility seriously.
Right.
That they have wealth. And they don't always talk about all the good works they do, even though sometimes they do. But there's an acknowledgement of it. Not, again, just like I said, that, you know, it's not bad people and good people. All of us have that conflict.
That's right. I love you share that, because that's a big part of mental health. People want to be black and white, or have it black and white. I'm angry, so I'm not happy. But I'm like, you can be angry but happy at the same time about something that's happening in your life, right? It's that love and hate relationship. You can love your parents, but also hate them sometimes for what they've done or what happened to you. The mental health is circular, right? You hear me say that all the time. So exactly, the good and bad, the intersectionalities of those experiences is a big part of life, and K-dramas really show that. So that said, do you have an ultimate favorite, or the one that you think about that just, I don't know, is so healing or has given you all the feels? Can you pick one? You don't have to, but I'm just curious.
Because of what I'm going through now, a lot of solitude, which, by the way, I love. Trust me, if you live in a dorm with 200 men for 6 years, you want to be alone,
sure.
Right? So I get that. But a lot of Korean shows deal with that issue of responsibility that comes from solitude. I think my favorite one is Memories from El Alhambra, which is set in Spain, because it shows you not just a mythical world and a successful world, but it shows you how no matter how successful you are, you can be just as lonely as anybody else. And how do you deal with that loneliness? No matter how much power you have.
That's true.
Loneliness is not a class issue. It affects everybody.
It does.
And that show, and it's set in Spain. I love Spain. I lived 2 years in Argentina.
Oh, wow.
That's why I'm using my hands when I talk. I didn't do that before. In Argentina, I learned to use my hands. I also learned to give a man a hug called an abrazo. You give a hug, an abrazo.
Abrazo.
The first time I hugged Bonnaroo was when he got out of prison, though, because you don't touch men in prison, you know. But I got to give him
Did he appreciate that hug? Did Bonnaroo appreciate that hug?
Oh, he gave it back 100%. He was wonderful.
Memories of Alhambra. Yeah, I'm gonna have to explore that. I mean, I like that drama. It was very entertaining. Yeah, Park Shin-hye's in it, Hyunbin's in it. I mean, it's a good drama. But the aspect of loneliness, very interesting, very fascinating. It's not like I didn't see that, but this is why I love doing this, talking to people who have different perspectives. The experiences as they're watching a K-drama can be very different. And like I said, I'm talking to a white man that I'm sorry is like the biggest fan that's making me realize, oh my gosh, I need to like uncover all the dramas he mentioned. Was it Lovers, which I have not seen. So last question. What's one thing we haven't discussed that you really want to share? We talked about classism, but what's a message that you'd like to get across to folks listening to this about K-dramas? Anything?
One of the wonders about K-drama is that it doesn't, because it is a genre, it really doesn't matter where you begin. It doesn't matter which show you watch. You will see a swoon. You will see clenched fist. You'll probably have a kid from an orphanage who nobody knew about. There are certain things that happen in these K-dramas that give you a great sense of comfort, and you'll see the real Korea. Think about all the last thing, the amazing food they show in Korea. You think, if you're in America and you think you know what comfort food is, oh no. Koreans have got comfort food 100% cornered. Every Korean mom or grandma, when you're having a hard time, she's going to try to feed you. Yep. And that comes out in all these shows. So you get to see all these different meals that are made in Korea and original and unique things. And I think that's a kind of a little treat that I don't know if many Koreans notice it, because that's just the way.
Oh, no, well, I do. Trust me. I mean, I probably end up gaining weight watching K-dramas. You're like, you know what? I'm going to make some ramen right now, really spicy, and add like the spicy rice cakes and eat it all. Because you watch it and that's one of the reasons why I love watching it. I lied. I have one more question that came up because we're talking about mental health and you have such a poignant story. How have K-dramas helped your mental health?
Before today, before our discussion, I would have said it was the family values that are demonstrated, because I aspire to those values. I was raised by a single mother too, by the way. So being a father means a lot to me. And so I've mentioned my kids because I missed half of their life. And it breaks my heart. Not only did I take somebody's life, the most tragic homicide process that could be when I killed somebody as a drunk driver, but I destroyed my kids' chance to have a father in their life on a regular basis. And so I aspire to reconnect with my kids, to have a connection. And I think that aspect that I mentioned right at the beginning about the Korean shows, that they're all positive. I've seen so much negativity. Most of the people I work with in the criminal justice reform area are African American, and some are educated and some are the urban poor. It's a mix. But there's something they don't know when a taxi cab passes them by if it's because they're racist. They don't know if somebody crosses the street in front of them, it's because they want to be on the other side of the street or because they're scared of them as a black man. And so there's a doubt that they have in America, doubt about their success, a doubt about what's going on. Is this police officer being fair, or is he racially profiling me? And there's no doubt in these Korean shows about the aspirational goal. K-dramas are all about you can be better than you are, work hard, go to school, respect your family, respect your elders. And those are things that I think that aspirational comment, just where we started, is the quintessential element of the Korean dramas. Not the swoon, not the clenched fist, not the food, not even the class issues, which I think are very important. It's that aspirational, fundamental underpinnings of these shows. And I love them. I really think everybody should watch K-dramas.
I mean, you said it so perfectly. I mean, I'm just, I love the word. I'm going to probably reuse that and quote you and saying aspirational. K dramas are aspirational. I love watching because I want to aspire to be or have a family of what I see. Aspire is such a positive word. So thank you so much, Wayne, for joining me on Noona's Noonchi podcast. I'm so glad to have met you through Clubhouse. Any last words for the audience before we close?
I am so grateful to have this chance to talk about it. And it's been so helpful for me. It must be your professional side coming out because you've helped me realize a lot of things about how K-dramas impact me that I didn't even realize before we spoke.
I am a therapist, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me. I'm so glad. I'm so glad to have met you. We're going to be talking more. Let's break down Vicenzo on Clubhouse soon.
Let's do that. And Clubhouse is where we'll meet because that's, again, my secret little stash is my Clubhouse clubs that I belong to. And I got to tell you, I'll be the only man in the room. There'll be 50 women in that room and I can't stop myself. I got to hear they're talking about something. I got to get my dose. You know?
The room's not complete when we're like, where's Wayne? Where's Wayne? I know you stop in, but we're like, there's Wayne. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It's wonderful, wonderful getting to know you.
Okay, be safe. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Noona's Noonchi podcast. You can listen in on platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, Google, and Apple, but also watch the podcast on our Noona's Noonchi YouTube channel every Monday where it launches at 6 p.m. Eastern.